Hookup. When Elena Carter agrees to marry Christopher Hayes, she thinks she's securing her family's future until she finds herself drawn into a forbidden affair with Christopher's ruthless uncle, Alexander Hayes. What starts as an escape from a loveless engagement spiral into a scandal that rocks Manhattan's wealthiest families. Torn between power, revenge, and a love that could destroy them both, Elena must decide if she's willing to pay the price for freedom, even when it means carrying Alexander's child and risking everything to break the chains her own heart forged. In a world where love is a weapon and loyalty is currency, can a forbidden passion survive the ruin it causes? Or will it consume them both, leaving nothing but secrets and scars behind? Prologue. I always believed my life would follow the script my parents wrote for me: an obedient daughter, an advantageous marriage, a picture-perfect future. But all it took was one glance, one stolen touch, one sin I couldn't resist to ruin everything. My name is Elena Carter, and I'm about to marry the wrong man. Or maybe I was never meant to marry him at all. The engagement. Smile, Elena. Just a little more sparkle in those eyes. Come on. The photographer's words felt like nails scratching down a blackboard. I forced my lips to curve upward as flashes exploded around me. My hand rested limply on Christopher Hayes's arm, my fiance. Christopher looked every inch the charming heir he was groomed to be. Dark suit tailored to perfection, hair slicked back, a polite smile that never touched his eyes. We'd been engaged for exactly 3 months. And tonight's extravagant engagement party at the Hayes estate was proof that our family's union was more about power and profit than love. Beautiful, Elena, Christopher murmured, leaning close enough for the guests to believe the act. His breath tickled my ear. Keep looking like that, and we'll be free of these vultures by midnight. I glanced at him. What if I don't want to be free of them? What if I want to actually enjoy my engagement? He laughed, humorless, cold. Don't start, Elena. We both know this is just a contract. Let's get through tonight. Contract. That's all we were. A merger of 2 wealthy families, with me as the bargaining chip. I nodded and turned my gaze to the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. Crystal chandeliers, clinking champagne glasses, forced smiles, everything reeked of money. And then I saw him. The stranger. He stood by the bar, alone but commanding. Broad shoulders filled out a charcoal suit. Black hair peppered with hints of silver framed a chiseled face. He looked older, maybe mid-40s, but carried himself with a quiet authority that made the crowd instinctively step aside. Our eyes met. My breath caught. Steel grey eyes pinned me in place, sharp, cold, and burning all at once. He lifted his glass in an almost mocking toast, his lips culling in the ghost of a smile. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I forced myself to look away, cheeks warm. Who was he? A guest. A business associate. Before I could ask Christopher, my mother whisked me away to greet yet another old money couple. But I felt that man's gaze like a brand on my skin. An unwanted introduction. Later, when the speeches ended and the guests drifted into small groups, I escaped to the garden. The cold night air kissed my bare shoulders. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to breathe. Elena Carter. The deep voice made me turn so fast I nearly stumbled. There he was, towering over me, half his face in shadow, half bathed in moonlight. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome. Sharp jaw, faint lines around his eyes, lips pressed into a firm line that made me wonder what they'd feel like on my skin. Stop it. I'm sorry, do I know you? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. His eyes flicked to my bare ring finger. Christopher had insisted I wear the diamond only for photos. I suppose not. I'm Alexander Hayes. The name punched the air from my lungs. Hayes. Of course. He extended a hand, large, strong, veins tracing up to a silver watch. I shook it. His grip was warm, possessive. "You're Christopher's uncle," he finished, eyes never leaving mine. "Well, half uncle, technically. My father's second son. We've never met because I tend to avoid family circuses like this." I pulled my hand back, my fingers tingling. "Why now?" He chuckled, a low, rough sound that made my stomach twist. I was curious about the woman foolish enough to sign her life away to my nephew. His words stung. "Excuse me." He stepped closer. I backed up until my back hit the marble railing of the garden terrace. Cold stone dug into my spine. "Don't look so offended, Elena," he murmured. "You know exactly what this engagement is. Do you think Christopher will ever love you?" His face was inches from mine now. I could smell his cologne, earthy, dark, intoxicating. I hated that my pulse jumped. "Who says I want him to?" I shot back. A dangerous smile touched his lips. "Good girl." Crossing the line. We stood there in the cold, breathing the same air. The party noise faded behind us, just muffled laughter, distant music. "Why are you really here?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Because this farce affects my family, my shares, my inheritance." I wanted to see the collateral damage with my own eyes. I stiffened. "Collateral damage?" He reached up, brushed a stray curl behind my ear. His knuckles grazed my neck. My knees almost buckled. "You," he said softly. "You're the damage." I slapped his hand away. "Stay away from me." He chuckled again, unfazed. "You don't want that." I hated him, this arrogant man who looked at me like he could see through my soul. And yet, when he turned and walked away, something inside me ached. Cold feet. That night, I lay awake in Christopher's guest bedroom. We'd agreed to stay separate until the wedding, though he hardly cared where I slept. My engagement ring sat on the nightstand, mocking me. I thought about Alexander. His voice, his touch, the way his eyes undressed me in seconds. What was wrong with me? I was engaged to his nephew. This was beyond wrong. Immoral. Dangerous. But in my chest, my heart whispered, "It's the first time you've felt alive in years." The contract. A week later, I found out just how deep the lies went. I overheard Christopher on the phone, coldly negotiating our future like a transaction. He'd been seeing someone else for months. Our wedding was nothing but a publicity stunt to secure a merger with my father's company. Once it was done, we'd quietly separate. I confronted him, of course. He barely looked up from his whiskey. "You knew what this was, Elena. Don't act surprised. Stay pretty, smile for the cameras, and we'll both get what we want." "What do I get, Christopher?" I demanded. "What do I get?" He shrugged. "Freedom. Money. A name. What else could you possibly want?" I slapped him. He didn't flinch. I ran out into the pouring rain, barefoot, lost. I didn't know where I was going until I was standing at the gates of Alexander's private townhouse. I'd only seen the address on a card he'd slipped into my purse the night of our engagement party. "In case you ever want the truth," the note had said. "The forbidden kiss." I rang the bell, shivering. Moments later, the door swung open. Alexander stood there, shirt unbuttoned, hair damp from a shower. He looked at me, soaked, trembling, and something in his eyes darkened. "Elena." I launched myself at him. My lips crashed into his. He caught me, lifted me like I weighed nothing, carried me inside. The door slammed shut behind us. I knew it was wrong. I knew it would ruin everything. I didn't care. A dangerous proposal. Hours later, wrapped in silk sheets, his scent all over me, I lay tangled in Alexander's arms. He traced lazy patterns on my bare back. "You know there's no going back now," he murmured against my neck. "I know." He pulled back to look at me. Then let's make it official. I frowned. Make what official? He sat up, muscles rippling under the soft light. Break off the engagement. Come with me instead. Be my lover. My contract lover. My heart stopped. You want me to publicly humiliate Christopher? He smirked. He deserves it. And you deserve better than to be sold off like cattle. My mind raced. And what happens when they find out? When they find us? He leaned down, kissed me so deeply my toes curled. Then let them find out. Let them burn. I want you anyway. The morning after, I woke up to the soft grey light of dawn spilling through Alexander's bedroom window. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming until I felt his arm draped heavily over my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. I turned my head. He was awake, eyes open, watching me like he'd been studying my sleeping face all night. Good morning, sweetheart, he murmured. His voice was still husky with sleep. I shifted under the sheets, suddenly shy. Last night felt unreal, like I'd stepped out of my life and into some forbidden fantasy. But the ache in my thighs, the marks on my neck, the scent of him on my skin reminded me it was all painfully real. We shouldn't have done this, I whispered. He propped himself up on an elbow, one brow raised. Are you regretting it? I opened my mouth, closed it. Did I regret it? The answer was buried under the heat, still humming through my veins. No, I admitted. But he leaned down, cut off my words with a kiss that stole the rest of my breath. The deal? I stayed until noon. We didn't talk about Christopher or the families or the wreckage waiting for me outside those walls. It was just us, his rough hands, my soft skin, secrets whispered in the dark. But as I pulled on my dress, I felt reality creeping back in. Alexander watched me from the edge of the bed, half-dressed, hair rumpled. He looked too perfect in the daylight, like sin wrapped in silk. Elena, he said, voice serious now. About what I said last night, about the arrangement. I turned to him. You're serious. You want me to be your contract lover? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's the same game your father and Christopher are playing, except this time, you're the one who gets something real out of it. I crossed my arms. And what do you get? He stood, stepped close enough that I could feel his heat again. He tipped my chin up with his thumb. I get you, Elena. On my terms. Not theirs. A shiver ran through me. It should have felt wrong, cheap, even. But there was something thrilling about it. About choosing to be someone's dirty little secret instead of being forced into a cold, fake marriage. And if I say yes? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He pressed his forehead to mine. Then you break it off with Christopher. Publicly. Come live here. Be mine. And when the dust settles, we deal with the fallout, together. My heart thundered. And if I say no? His mouth brushed my ear. Then it'll ruin him anyway. But I'd much rather ruin you first. God help me. I wanted him to. Breaking the engagement. The next evening, I sat across from Christopher at the Hayes family's private dining room. His father, Henry Hayes, and my father, Richard Carter, sat at either end of the table, two men who'd spent decades tightening their grip on their fortunes. Christopher barely looked at me, swirling his wine glass like he'd rather be anywhere else. I cleared my throat. I have something to say. My father glanced up. Elena, can it wait? We're discussing the merger. No. I forced my voice steady. It can't wait. I'm calling off the engagement. The silence that followed was so thick I felt it press against my ribs. Christopher's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. What the hell are you talking about? I met his gaze. You don't love me. You never did. And I won't marry you to prop up your reputation while you sleep with half of Manhattan behind my back. His face darkened. You ungrateful. My father slammed his hand on the table. Elena, sit down and stop this nonsense. I stood. I'm done being your bargaining chip. Find someone else to sell off. Henry Hayes just watched me, cold, calculating. But I saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Suspicion. He glanced at Christopher, then back at me. Is this your idea alone? He asked slowly. Or is someone whispering in your ear? My pulse skittered. I forced my face blank. No one whispers in my ear, Mr. Hayes. I've made my choice. And with that, I walked out. My father's shouts followed me down the hall. But they couldn't reach me anymore. The fallout. The headlines hit the next morning. Heiress breaks off multi-million-dollar engagement. Paparazzi camped outside my apartment building. Reporters screamed my name when I stepped out to get coffee. Some called me reckless. Others called me brave. But the real storm brewed behind closed doors. My father called a dozen times. I didn't answer. Christopher sent flowers, then angry texts when I didn't reply to those either. I found myself at Alexander's townhouse that night, my suitcase in hand. He opened the door, looked at my bag, then at my face. So it's done, he said. I stepped inside, dropped my suitcase at my feet. It's done. He closed the door behind me, then pushed me up against it, his mouth crashing onto mine like a promise and a threat all at once. Learning the rules, days turned into weeks. I moved into Alexander's townhouse, hidden away from the scandal swirling outside. He kept me close, always touching, always taking. But he made it clear, this was not some fairy tale. This was a contract of want, not love. I lay tangled in his sheets one night, breathless, my body humming from hours spent under his command. What happens next? I asked, tracing circles on his chest. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. Next, you learn how to stand beside me, Elena. Not as a meek fiancé to some boy, but as a woman who knows exactly what she wants. I lifted my head. And what do you want? He rolled me onto my back, pinning my wrists above my head. His eyes glittered like storm clouds. You, he growled. Always you. The first strike. It didn't take long for Christopher to retaliate. A week after I moved in with Alexander, my father called me to his office. I agreed, mostly out of guilt. He looked older than I remembered, grey hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. Do you understand what you've done? He hissed, throwing a stack of papers across his mahogany desk. Our stocks are tanking. The Hayes family is threatening to pull the merger. I swallowed. You mean Christopher is threatening to pull the merger? My father's eyes narrowed. Don't be clever, Elena. You think you're special. He'll drag your name through the mud. He'll ruin you. He'll ruin us. I folded my arms. I'm not coming back. His face darkened. Then you leave me no choice. I felt cold creep up my spine. What does that mean? He smiled, a cruel, brittle thing. You think Alexander Hayes is your savior. He's your ruin. And when he's done with you, he'll throw you away too. A dangerous offer. That night, I told Alexander everything, my father's threats, Christopher's rumors. He listened in silence, swirling a glass of scotch in his hand. When I finished, he leaned back, watching me through half-lidded eyes. They'll come for you, he said softly. They'll try to break you. They'll try to use you to get to me. I crossed the room, knelt in front of him. Then what do we do? He cupped my chin, forced me to look up at him. We fight back. I blinked. How? He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. By making them watch. By making them choke on their scandal. If they want a show, we'll give them one. I shivered. What are you planning, Alexander? He pulled back, his smile sharp enough to cut. A wedding. But this time, on our terms. My breath caught. A wedding? He stood towering over me. You're mine, Elena. It's time everyone knew it. The proposal, it wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle. It was Alexander, fierce, possessive, unstoppable. He slid a velvet box onto the nightstand while I lay sprawled across the sheets, still catching my breath. Open it, he ordered. I did. Inside sat a ring, vintage, a massive sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. I don't need your answer now, he said, his voice rough as his thumb traced my collarbone. But think about it. Be mine for real. Be my wife. Let them watch us burn the world down together. I stared at the ring. My heart thundered so loud I was sure he could hear it. This wasn't the safe life my parents wanted. It wasn't the cold contract Christopher offered. This was wildfire. This was ruin. This was freedom. The new engagement. When I agreed to marry Alexander, it wasn't because I needed saving. It was because I wanted to burn the old version of myself to ashes. We didn't announce it with flowers or soft family dinners. We made it a declaration of war. The press release went live on a Sunday morning. Elena Carter and Alexander Hayes announced engagement weeks after broken wedding to his nephew. By noon, my face was on every gossip site, every business blog, every breakfast show. The photographs were worse. Me stepping out of Alexander's townhouse in his shirt, hair undone, a sapphire ring flashing on my finger. Christopher's PR team scrambled to bury the scandal, but it was too late. The world saw it for what it was. Betrayal. Forbidden. Taboo. And intoxicatingly fascinating. Father's ultimatum. My father called. This time I answered. Elena, you're coming home, he said. His voice was cold as marble. No, Dad. I'm not. You don't understand the damage you're causing. No, you don't understand, I snapped. I'm not your leverage anymore. I'm not your product. He hissed a breath. You think Alexander loves you. He's using you to get back at his brother's family, to humiliate Christopher, too. I know what he is, I said softly, and I know what he isn't. He's not you. Silence. Then he laughed, bitter and sharp. You're going to regret this. When he's done with you, you'll have nothing. Then I'll have nothing, I said, and it'll still be more honest than what you offered. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the first taste of real freedom. Enemy lines. Alexander took me to dinner that night. Not to hide, but to be seen. We chose the most extravagant restaurant in Manhattan. Paparazzi camped outside. I walked in on his arm, head held high, the sapphire ring glittering under the chandeliers. People stared. Some whispered. Some pretended not to look at all. He held my chair for me, his touch lingering at my waist, claiming me with every glance, every brush of his lips against my ear. Scared? He asked, low enough that only I could hear. I looked him dead in the eyes. Terrified. He laughed. Good. Stay terrified. Stay hungry. They can't break you if you don't care what they think. Halfway through the meal, Christopher walked in. He didn't come alone. He had some blonde draped on his arm like an accessory. He saw me, froze. His jaw tightened, but he forced a smirk and led his date to a table within full view. For an hour, it was a silent battle across the dining room. His icy glares, Alexander's amused glances, my heart pounding like a drum. When we got up to leave, Alexander paused by Christopher's table. Nice choice, nephew, he said, nodding at the blonde. But she won't break your heart the way Elena did, will she? I saw Christopher's hands curl into fists. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The video. I woke up the next morning to Alexander's voice calling my name. Elena, come here. He was in his study, sleeves rolled up, laptop open. When I stepped in, he turned the screen toward me. A grainy video played, security camera footage. Me and Alexander on his doorstep that first night. My soaked dress clinging to my skin. His hands gripping my face. His mouth devouring mine. It cut off before he carried me inside, but it didn't need to show more. The headline below it screamed, "Heiress betrays fiancé with his own uncle. The forbidden affair caught on camera." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Christopher, Alexander said calmly. "He leaked it. Or your father did. Makes no difference." I backed away. "They'll destroy me. My reputation, my..." He rose from his chair, crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands framed my face, just like in the video. "Let them," he murmured. "You're not going back to them. You're mine now." His mouth crashed onto mine before I could answer. And just like that night, I didn't want to. The battle plan. By the time the press finished tearing me apart, my father's company stocks had tanked. Christopher's social media pages turned into a war zone of betrayal memes and scandal jokes. But Alexander, he was untouchable. He thrived on the chaos. He gathered his legal team in the townhouse study while I listened from the stairs. "We'll expose them," he said, voice low but lethal. Christopher's offshore accounts. The hush money to his mistress. The fake charity donations. "We'll leak it all." "Alexander," I stepped in, heart hammering. "If you do this, there's no going back. They'll never forgive you." He turned to me. His eyes softened only for me. "I don't need their forgiveness. I need you." He dismissed the team, waited until the door clicked shut. Then he stalked toward me, predatory. "Do you trust me, Elena?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. He grinned. "Good. Because once this starts, you're not Elena Carter anymore. You're mine. Elena Hayes. Torn. It should have been simple." He offered me power, freedom, passion. Everything I thought I wanted. But at night, when he slept beside me, I lay awake wondering if I'd traded one cage for another. Was this love? Or obsession? Did it matter? Some nights, I slipped out of bed, wrapped myself in his silk robe, and stared out the giant window at the glittering city. I thought of my mother, how she'd raised me to smile, to agree, to fold myself smaller and smaller until I vanished into someone else's plan. Would she be proud of me now? Or horrified? I didn't know anymore. Confrontation. The next day, I did the unthinkable. I went to see Christopher. He was in his office downtown, furious when I showed up. But he waved everyone out, slammed the door shut behind me. "What do you want, Elena?" he spat. "To talk." He laughed bitterly. "About what?" "How you humiliated me. How you spread your legs for my uncle." I slapped him so hard my palm stung. He staggered back, hand pressed to his cheek. His eyes were wild, rage, heartbreak, disbelief. "I never loved you, Christopher," I said, voice shaking. "But you didn't love me either. So don't you dare act like the victim now." His jaw clenched. "Do you think he loves you? Do you think Alexander gives a damn about you?" I turned for the door. At least he doesn't lie about what he wants. His laugh followed me down the hall. "He'll ruin you, Elena. Just like he ruins everything he touches." Maybe he was right. But it was too late to care. The family gathering. It was Henry Hayes, Alexander's father, Christopher's grandfather, who called the summit. A private dinner. All 3 of us, Henry, Alexander, and me. The old man sat at the head of the long table like a king on his throne. His sharp blue eyes flicked between us. "You've made quite a mess, Alexander." Alexander just sipped his whiskey. "I've made things honest." Henry's gaze shifted to me. "Do you think he loves you, child? Do you know what happens to girls who tie themselves to men like him?" I met his stare, pulse steady. I know exactly what happens, and I'd rather burn beside him than drown with the rest of you. A muscle ticked in Henry's jaw. You're throwing away your family's legacy. I leaned forward. It was never my legacy. It was yours. Alexander chuckled beside me, low and dangerous. We're done here, old man. He stood, pulled me up with him, his hand firm on my waist. I didn't look back as we left the room. Third choice. Back at the townhouse, he cornered me in the kitchen, hands on either side of my face. You were perfect tonight, he murmured. Am I whispered back. Or am I just your weapon? His fingers tightened in my hair. You're mine. That's all that matters. I searched his eyes, for softness, for love, for something more than this endless hunger. I didn't find it, but I didn't pull away either. A new kind of vow. It was a small ceremony. No family. No cameras. Just me, Alexander, and the city lights blinking far below the penthouse terrace. He slid the ring onto my finger again, this time with a quiet vow that tasted like sin and freedom all at once. I don't promise forever, he murmured, mouth brushing my ear. I promise everything. My ruin, my kingdom, my name. And I, foolish, reckless, burning alive, promised him the same. The quiet after the storm. Marriage changed nothing, and it changed everything. By law, I was Elena Hayes now. Mrs. Alexander Hayes. The scandal was yesterday's news, buried under newer, dirtier headlines. The gossip pages moved on. The boardrooms didn't. For weeks, we stayed inside Alexander's penthouse, a glass castle in the sky. Locked doors. Silken sheets. His hands on my skin, every night like a brand. In public, I was his trophy. In private, I was something else, his secret, his obsession, maybe his weakness. But sometimes, when he thought I was asleep, I'd wake to find him at the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low, sharp, dangerous. He said it was business. I wanted to believe him. The first crack, it started with the phone calls. Late at night, when I curled into his side, I'd feel his body stiffen under my touch. I'd hear his muffled voice through the bathroom door, clipped sentences in a language I didn't know. One night, I asked, "Who were you talking to?" He pulled me close, kissed my neck, his fingers drifting under the silk strap of my nightgown. No one that concerns you. His mouth always found a way to end the conversation. Whispers and lies. I went to lunch with Isabel, my oldest friend, the only one who hadn't abandoned me when the engagement blew up. She stirred her iced coffee, watching me over the rim of her sunglasses. So how's married life with Manhattan's favorite villain? I laughed, but it sounded forced, even to me. Complicated. She leaned closer. I heard he's negotiating a buyout of your father's company. I froze. What? Isabel shrugged. It's just a rumor, but your dad's desperate. Christopher's leveraged to the neck. And Alexander, he never plays fair. I forced a smile. It's just gossip, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't untangle. Seeds of doubt. That night, I found the documents. They weren't hidden well, just left on his desk, half buried under other papers. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But I did. Page after page, confidential agreements, stock options, legal letters. Alexander's signature everywhere. At the center of it all, my father's company, bleeding money, ripe for takeover. A neat plan to gut the Carters. To gut me. I heard the door click open behind me. Elena, his voice. Calm. Dangerous. I turned. What is this? He didn't look surprised. He crossed the room, plucked the papers from my shaking hands, stacked them like they were nothing. Business. You lied to me. He tilted his head. Did I? I stepped back. You used me. He grabbed my wrist so fast I barely flinched. I saved you. They were going to sell you off. Use you until you were dry and empty. I gave you a choice. You chose me. Because I thought you loved me. He laughed, low, humorless. And you think love has anything to do with this? The crack widens. I locked myself in the guest bedroom that night, the same room where I'd slept as Christopher's fiancé. Funny how little changed. Through the door, I heard Alexander pacing. He didn't knock. He didn't beg. He didn't apologize. He just waited. And when the sun rose, he was gone. The test. Days passed. Silence stretched between us like a battlefield no one wanted to cross. I met my father at a cafe, neutral ground. He looked older, smaller. The merger had gutted him, and Alexander's buyout rumors were killing him. Elena, he said, voice cracked. You have to make him stop. I laughed, bitter and small. Do you think he listens to me? You're his wife. I stirred my tea. And what were you to me? When you traded me for stock options and headlines. He looked at me then, really looked at me. I didn't know you hated me this much. I don't hate you, I said. I just don't belong to you anymore. The unforgivable. I found Alexander in his study that night, glass of scotch in hand, eyes dark and distant. Call it off, I said. He didn't look up. No, Alexander, you knew who I was when you married me, he said. His voice was so calm, it scared me more than shouting would have. You wanted freedom. This is the price. I crossed the room, slammed my palm on his desk. I didn't want this. I didn't want to watch you destroy what's left of my family just to prove a point. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes, cold steel, unreadable. This was always the point, Elena. Power. Revenge. And you're mine, whether you like how I win or not. I felt something snap inside me. Running. I packed a bag that night. I didn't care where I went, just away from that penthouse, that suffocating heat that used to feel like safety. I left the ring on the nightstand. Sapphire and diamonds, heavy as a chain. I didn't leave a note. The revelation. It was Isabel who found me, 3 days later, holed up in her spare room, phone off, curtains drawn. Elena, she said softly, sitting on the bed beside me. You can't hide forever. I buried my face in my knees. What else can I do? I can't go back. I can't stay gone. He'll find me. She pressed a warm hand to my back. You have to tell him. Tell him what? She gave me a look, gentle, exasperated, motherly all at once. Elena, you're pregnant. Chapter 36. The weight of it. It shouldn't have been possible. Or maybe it should have been obvious. The missed periods. The nausea-eyed blamed on stress. The bone-deep exhaustion. A baby. His baby. Terror warred with something else, something I didn't want to name yet. Hope. Or was it just more fear? The return. I didn't want to see him. But I knew I had to. I went back to the penthouse at midnight, hoping he'd be asleep so I could slip inside, pack what I'd left behind. But of course, he was awake. He sat in the living room, drink in hand, suit jacket tossed over the couch. When I stepped in, he didn't move. Elena, don't, I whispered. He stood, closed the space between us in 3 slow steps. I pressed my palm to his chest, trying to hold him back. It didn't work. You ran, he said. I had to. His hands framed my face. You came back. I didn't come back for you. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, hurt. Anger? Regret? Then why? He asked. I sucked in a breath. I'm pregnant, Alexander. The price of everything. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He didn't pull me into his arms like a hero in a story. He just looked at me, so deeply it felt like he was peeling me open. "How far?" he asked. 2 months. Maybe more. His thumb brushed my cheek, catching a tear I didn't know I'd let fall. "I won't let you leave me again," he murmured. This baby, you're mine." It should have sounded like a promise. It sounded like a prison. A cage with golden bars. The days after I told Alexander about the baby blurred into one long stretch of quiet tension. He didn't rage. He didn't beg. He simply tightened the invisible cage around me. A private doctor on call. Security stationed outside the penthouse door. My phone replaced with one of his choosing. Every move I made traced, noted, controlled. "You need rest," he said when I tried to leave for a checkup alone. "You need protection," he said when I tried to meet Isabel for lunch. When I tried to argue, he kissed me so fiercely my words died on my tongue. A child, or a bargain. One night, I found him in the nursery he'd ordered built overnight, a room that had been a spare library yesterday now painted pale grey, tiny white furniture lined against the walls. He stood in the centre, staring at a bassinet like it was a loaded gun. I hovered at the doorway, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you thinking?" He turned slowly. There was no softness in his eyes, only something cold, calculating. "I'm thinking of legacy," he said, "of what my father built, of what I'm about to destroy, and of what I'll leave behind when I'm done." He crossed the room, placed his palm flat over my stomach. I flinched. "This child," he murmured, "will never beg at someone else's table. It will own the table." I stepped back, or be chained to it. He caught my chin. "Not if I teach them first." I wanted to tell him he couldn't shape a child like a hostile takeover, but I didn't have the words. Secrets in the shadows. I didn't trust him anymore, but I couldn't trust anyone else either. So I started keeping my own secrets. While Alexander buried himself in meetings and lawyers, I slipped out with Isabel, under the excuse of doctor appointments, and met with an attorney. I asked about custody, about disappearing, about whether you could legally vanish when your husband owned the city's best lawyers and its worst criminals. I asked if you could run when the man you were trying to escape had given you everything and taken everything at the same time. The answers weren't comforting. Christopher returns. One morning, I found Christopher waiting in the lobby of the penthouse tower. Security tried to push him back, but he wouldn't leave until I agreed to see him. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him, hollow-eyed, thin, his once perfect suit rumpled like he'd slept in it. We sat in the garden terrace on the 50th floor, far enough from Alexander's ears, though I knew better than to think we were truly alone. "Congratulations," Christopher said, his smile thin as paper. "Manhattan's favorite villain becomes a father." Who knew? I didn't bother with small talk. "Why are you here?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because you're still useful to him. But what happens when you're not? Get to the point. He's using you, Elena. He doesn't want a wife. He wants a heir. Once he has it." I stood so fast the chair scraped the marble. "You don't know anything about him." "I know exactly who he is," Christopher snapped. "And I know you. You think you're safe because he says you are. You think you're special. You're not. You're a pawn. Same as me." I turned my back on him. "Get out," he called after me as I walked away. "When you finally see it, don't come running to me for help. I won't save you from him." Shattered trust. That night, I confronted Alexander. I found him in the study, sleeves rolled up, fingers drumming on a stack of contracts. "Did you marry me for the child?" I asked. His eyes flicked up, sharp, assessing, like a hunter scenting a threat. "I married you because I wanted you," he said. "The child is ours. A bonus." I crossed my arms over my chest, over the small swell that wasn't yet showing to the world, but felt huge to me. What happens when you don't want me anymore? He rose, moved around the desk, stopped inches from me. I will always want you, even if I leave. His eyes darkened. You won't. The breaking point. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to his breathing beside me, steady as ever, while my own thoughts roared like a storm. I loved him. I hated him. I needed him. I was terrified of him. And under it all, a new terror pulsed inside me, the tiny heartbeat that tethered me to him forever. Escape attempt. I packed a bag at dawn, quiet as I could. I didn't bother with much. Money. IDs. A burner phone Isabel had slipped me in secret. I got as far as the elevator. The doors slid open, and Alexander stood there, black suit immaculate, eyes cold and clear. Going somewhere, Mrs. Hayes. My breath caught in my throat. I need air. He stepped into the elevator, crowding me back against the mirrored wall. The bag slipped from my fingers. You need me. His hand came up, fingers threading into my hair, tipping my head back. Don't ever lie to me again. He kissed me, rough, punishing, claiming. I hated how my body melted anyway. Bargain. Hours later, he poured me tea in the sunlit kitchen like nothing had happened. If you want to run, run through me, he said. Not around me. I set the cup down untouched. I can't breathe, Alexander. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, shirt sleeves pushed up to his elbows. I can loosen the leash, he said, if you promise not to choke me with it. And if I don't promise? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Then I'll tighten it again, a mother's vow. I went to the doctor alone the next day, with his men shadowing me from a distance. On the way back, I stood at a crosswalk in Midtown, wind whipping hair into my eyes. I felt the baby then, a flutter, quick and impossible. A tiny reminder that this wasn't just about me anymore. That whatever cage I was in, gilded, velvet, invisible, I'd break it myself if I had to. For them. The final play. That night, in our bed, I laid my head on his chest and listened to the heartbeat that once felt like home. I want out of the buyout, I whispered. Leave my father's company alone. He didn't move. Didn't answer. I pushed up on my elbow, forced him to look at me. If you want me, really want me, you let that part of me go. His jaw ticked. And if I don't? I traced my fingers over the ink on his collarbone, my name hidden there in Roman script, a secret no one else knew. Then you lose me anyway. He caught my wrist, pressed it to his mouth. A vow. Or a threat. I couldn't tell any more. The breaking dawn. The city woke under a bruised sunrise the morning I knew something had to give. Alexander hadn't spoken a word about the buyout for days. He moved through the penthouse like a ghost, eyes hard and distant. His touch at night was gentle, almost desperate, a contradiction to the iron grip he held my world with by day. I lay awake after he fell asleep, watching him breathe, memorizing him. Because I knew what I was about to do might break us both for good. A deal with the devil. I met my father at a downtown hotel, a place so ordinary it was almost invisible. He looked like a man already half dead. The deal Alexander was closing would swallow everything my family built, factories, lands, shares, all gone in a heartbeat. I sat across from him in the cheap cafe, the smell of burnt coffee and stale pastries hanging between us. You shouldn't be here, he rasped. He'll find out. I want him to find out, I said. My voice didn't even shake. My father's eyes darted around the room. You have no idea how dangerous he is. I almost laughed. I know him better than you ever did, I wanted to say. Instead, I slid the folder across the table. The papers inside were what was left of my inheritance, bonds, trust accounts, silent partnerships I'd kept hidden under my mother's name. Take this, I said. Use it to keep the company alive. Or let it die your way, not his. His hand trembled as he touched the folder. He'll never forgive you. I smiled, but it didn't touch my eyes. I don't need his forgiveness. I needed my freedom. Revelation. He knew before I got home. He always knew. I found him standing in the nursery, the same cold, pale room that still smelled like fresh paint and dreams I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. He held the folder in his hand, crumpled, bent, evidence of my betrayal. When I stepped inside, he didn't speak. He didn't shout. He just looked at me like he didn't recognize me. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Finally, he said, "Why?" "Because this baby deserves better than being born into a war you started," I whispered. "I won't raise them to believe power means you destroy everything you touch." His laugh was low, broken. "And you think giving him the means to fight me changes anything? You think I'll just let you go? I think you love me enough not to cage me anymore." Silence. Then he crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbed my face in his hands, kissed me so hard I tasted blood. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "Do you still love me?" he asked. I didn't lie. Yes. His hands fell away. The folder hit the floor. "So this is how you love me," he said. His voice was raw. "By cutting out my heart." Exodus. I packed while he watched. He didn't stop me. He didn't speak. I folded my clothes into a single battered suitcase. I left the jewelry he gave me, the designer gowns, the shoes I'd only worn on his arm. I kept the ring, not because I'd wear it, but because it reminded me who I'd been. He stood in the doorway as I zipped the suitcase shut. "Where will you go?" he asked. I wiped at my cheeks. "Somewhere you can't follow." His lips curled. "You know I can find you." I held my stomach, the small swell that was ours, no matter how much we hurt each other. "Then find me different," I said. "Or don't find me at all." Running again, I stayed with Isabel. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say "I told you so." She just gave me a room, warm soup, and a safe silence. I tried not to think about him, the way he held me, the way his darkness felt like home and danger at once. I tried not to imagine the baby with his eyes. I failed. The final visit. He came for me 2 weeks later. No guards. No lawyers. No weapons, but himself. He found me in the tiny garden behind Isabel's brownstone, my hands buried in the soil like I could dig up a new life. When I looked up, he was there, black coat, eyes sharp, and unbearably sad. "You look like your mother," he said. It wasn't what I expected. I stood, brushing dirt from my fingers. "Why are you here?" He stepped closer. Careful. Like I was something wild that might bolt. "I called off the buyout," he said. I froze. "I burned the contracts," he continued. "Your father can have his empire. I don't want it anymore." I swallowed. "Why?" He shrugged, a small, helpless gesture I'd never seen him make before. "Because I'd rather lose the world than lose you." Truth, I wanted to run into his arms. I wanted to scream at him for making me love him so much it hurt to breathe. Instead, I whispered, "What happens now?" He reached out, so slowly, like giving me a chance to refuse. His palm brushed my cheek. Warm. Familiar. Mine. "Now we build something they can't tear apart," he said. "If you'll let me." The contract rewritten. There was no ring this time. No velvet box. No lavish vow. Just him, kneeling in the dirt beside me, our hands pressed over my belly where a child kicked, alive, stubborn, so loved already. "I don't promise perfection," he said. His voice trembled. "I promise truth. And a choice. And that if you ever need to run, I'll run with you." I closed my eyes. Let the sun hit my face. Let the future unspool in my mind, messy, imperfect, free. I whispered, okay, and he kissed me, not like possession, not like war, like freedom. Epilogue. Months later, the city forgot our scandal. Stocks rose. Mergers shifted. Gossip found new prey. And somewhere far from Manhattan's towers, in a small house with creaking floors and wild gardens, Elena Hayes woke at dawn to a baby's cries and a man's soft laughter. A man who once ruined her life and gave her a chance to build her own. A man who let her belong to herself, even when she chose to belong to him too. Their love was never perfect. It was never meant to be. But it was theirs. And for once, that was enough. The end.